Now let's move into the final section of this chapter. Decision-making biases. This is one of the most fascinating parts of decision-making because it reveals how our minds systematically lead us away from rational thinking. These biases are often grouped under the field called behavioral decision-making, or sometimes heuristics and biases. There are many of them, but we'll focus on some of the most common and influential ones. 1. Overconfidence bias. The first bias is overconfidence. This happens when people believe they know more than they actually do, or when they hold overly positive views of their abilities or decisions. This is especially common among CEOs and leaders. Overconfident leaders may pay too much for acquisitions, take excessive innovation risks, ignore warning signs or negative feedback. They believe they can succeed where others have failed. Sometimes that pays off, but often it does not. 2. Anchoring effect. The anchoring bias occurs when the first piece of information we receive becomes the anchor we compare everything else to. For example, you ask for the price of a car. The dealer gives a very high price first. Even if they lower it later, your mind stays anchored to that first number, making the final offer seem reasonable, even if it's still high. This is why price tags are often followed by discounts. The original price serves as the anchor, not the real value. 3. Availability bias. This bias happens when we judge how likely something is based on how easily we can recall examples. For instance, if we hear frequent news stories about plane crashes, we may believe flying is dangerous, even though statistically it is much safer than driving. Our brains equate memorable with likely. 4. Escalation of commitment. This bias refers to continuing on a failing course of action, simply because we don't want to admit we were wrong. A classic example is projects that go far over budget, take much longer than planned, continue even when success is unlikely. Decision makers think, we've already invested so much, we can't quit now. This mindset leads to throwing good resources after bad ones. 5. Fundamental attribution error. This bias shapes how we explain success and failure. We attribute our successes to our own ability. We attribute our failures to external factors. For example, if I get a good grade, I say it's because I worked hard. If I get a bad grade, I blame the unfair test. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but not others. 6. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is the tendency to say we should have known after the outcome is already clear. Many decisions seem obvious only after we know how they turned out. But at the time the decision was made, the information was incomplete. This is why evaluating past decisions requires us to consider what was known at the time, not what we know now. 7. Confusing correlation with causation. Sometimes two things happen at the same time, and we mistakenly assume one causes the other. For example, ice cream sales and drowning deaths both increase in summer, but ice cream does not cause drowning. A third factor, hot weather, influences both. So correlation does not imply causation. 8. Sampling bias. This bias occurs when we draw conclusions from too few examples. For instance, we might look at a few extremely successful entrepreneurs who dropped out of college and conclude that leaving school leads to success. But what we don't see are the many people who also dropped out and failed. Those cases are missing from the comparison. Without a complete sample, our conclusions can be misleading. 9. Framing effect. The way information is worded influences our decisions. For example, consider a surgery. 90% of patients survive, versus 10% of patients die. These statements describe the same statistics, but research shows people are much more willing to choose the surgery when the information is framed positively. The way an option is presented can change the decision, even if the facts are identical. 10. Groupthink. Finally, groupthink occurs when group members prioritize agreement over critical thinking. When everyone wants harmony, disagreement is suppressed, even when there are real problems. This can lead to disastrous decisions because no one speaks up. Wrap up. These biases don't mean people are foolish. They mean our brains use efficiency shortcuts that sometimes work well and sometimes mislead us. To improve decision-making, become aware of these biases. Slow down when decisions matter. Seek diverse viewpoints. Question your first assumptions. Understanding these biases is not about becoming perfectly rational. It's about becoming a more thoughtful and reflective decision maker.